I'm going to talk about a mental model that's helped me throughout my career. It's also helped me within my different roles in life, whether it be daughter, partner, friend. It's been so valuable for me, so I wanted to share it. So what I'd like to do here is introduce myself and the journey I've taken, the hero's journey. And I'm going to go through the different aspects of this model that I know of, and then we're going to do an exercise at the end for a takeaway. So I invite you to go on this hero's journey with me, because it's definitely not something I expected to happen. This is the scroll. I started out playing basketball for the University of Alberta Pandas, and I was going to go to the States and play. And on that team, I met my friend Rochelle Van Zanten, and we created this band called Fainting Daisies. And that turned into a juggernaut of 10 years, a career where I felt like I was running to catch up to a train that was ahead of me all the time. And within that experience, we were also at the University of Alberta, and I had an opportunity to go into theater, but I decided to go into the band because I had a tour booked to Kelowna, Penticton, and Kamloops. It was a big tour, and I jumped into a Ford Econoline van, and the rest was history. And during that experience, traveling the world and going to different countries and cities, I started to pick up on systems and patterns within my environment and within people. And when you're standing on a stage, it's amazing the vantage point you get when you're in a venue. And when you look at that over the course of 10 years, I was starting to accumulate information that I didn't know how to define. I didn't know what it was, and it kind of just left me hanging there. So I eventually became a designer, and this is why. Listening to my parents' record collection, I would see shapes and colors, galaxies and universes. And this album in particular was a real cue for me. That's Giorgio Moroder on your right. He's a brilliant producer, and this album cued me that I perhaps had synesthesia. So that's where the reverie part comes in, because I interface myself with reality in a different way. When I hear things, I see things. So it makes sense that I became a designer eventually. But during this hero's journey, I had some assistance in defining my reality, and I wanted to share this with you. So the first step was I was a young Luke Skywalker touring and not having a language to define what I was experiencing. And thank goodness for my Obi-Wan, Jovi Baker, who produces in like a 360-degree sphere. If we were to print out our songs on a 3D printer, they would most likely come out as mandalas. And I was cued by this because he has mandala tapestries in his studio. So he was instrumental in showing me ways of listening and how perhaps I interface with reality in a 360-degree or more type of dimension. So the next part of this journey was I found my Yodas at a company called Courage. And they were mostly academics, but they had definitions for what I was experiencing in my life. I would share my past and just how I order the world, and they said, there's a definition for that. There's a thing, it's an actual thing, and it gave me validation of what I was experiencing. So one of those models really resonated for me, and it's become instrumental in how I engage with everyone. And it's by this gentleman, Otto Scharmer. It's called the generative listening model. And it's so valuable. So keep on scrolling. So what I did is, in my life, the tertiary became the primary. What I thought I was going to do, it wasn't. The adjacent came in, and it took over and propelled me. I always stayed curious. I was informed by my sphere of influence, and obviously other folks are your greatest teachers. Mental models. They're amazing for sense making and your place in the world. And it grounds you in your ontology and your Umwelt. And I'll explain those two because we're going to dip our toe in the academia waters real quick. Your ontology is how you filter the world. It's more of a metaphysical term. It's how you've been brought up. It's your experiences. It's your filters. And we make sense through these ontologies. And what I find with ontologies, when they mix, it's your Umwelt, the world that you experience. And when we interface, it's the good old Venn diagram. That middle, that Vesica Pisces, that's where things become really interesting because that's a place of emergence for ideas. It's also a place of being activated and being challenged because when my world and someone else's world mix, sometimes there's going to be dissonance. So this is where I think it's so important to be open and have a regulated system when you're doing this. And I'll explain further what that means. So I believe we have the first step of generative listening coming up here. The first step is downloads. We get downloads all the time, literally on our computer, but also when we're talking, when we're catching up with one another, when we're getting a creative brief and there's a list of things that need to be done, or client gives you a laundry list of what they want. It's habitual. It's what we do every day. The second part is your open mind. And it's factual, but it's also external to you, and you're confirming and disconfirming information with this experience. The next one is open heart, listening from within, and that empathy that we have for others. And it's that effort of trying to see where people are coming from or feel what they're feeling. But the fourth one is the one that's really, really interesting to me. And it's listening from source, the open will. And that's wanting the future to emerge from a interaction. So it's basically a shift in yourself and your identity. It's wanting to change within that Venn diagram when you're interfacing with reality or somebody else. It's being open enough to become somebody else. And that can be really, challenging. And there's ways to move through that. And I wanted to give you a tool at the end of this to inform you on how to move through those things. So, you see open will all the time. Like Saturday Night Live, it's always yes and. They build off one another. There's hardly any resistance. They're paid to not resist. And when they do resist, that's when they break. And I love watching their eyes on that show because you can tell they get a kick out of each other from time to time with the work that they do. That's a perfect example of having an open will, letting it flow and letting it grow without resistance or reaction. Open will happens in innovation. One of my favorite slide guitar players, Sean Verreau from Widemouth Mason, he plays a lap steel guitar with 3 slides on his hand. And that to me is him having a really, really open self to see what else he can do. It also helps with collective creativity and during collaboration. It just helps those friction points. You move past them faster, so you create something completely new. So how will it benefit you? I find it's great for navigating different perspectives and feeling grounded and secure. That's really key because life is full of liminal moments. And that's what I'm getting at here with the open will idea is there's nothing as constant change. We're always going through it and it can be really uncomfortable. So those little spaces in between, those are the parts that are very informative and they're full of potential. But knowing how to regulate ourselves through that is really key. Just to make sure we're on the same page about what liminal is with pattern language, it literally means threshold in Latin. And it's that distance between past and present. It's also seen in the Sundance, the rite of passage that's done on the prairies. It's uncomfortable. It just is. My partner and I were looking for a house, and we went through a month-long crazy market experience, and last minute, last day we had to actually find a place we did. And the flow and the experience that we had within that month's time was wild. And if it weren't for this exercise that I'm gonna give to you and offer, I don't know, like, we came out okay, maybe one gray hair each. So, so in music, to me, the notes are fine, but it's the distance between the two notes that really matter. And that's the golden thread that connects everything. My favorite musicians that I listen to or watch are the ones that just, they sit on stage for 5 minutes and they listen. They don't play, they just listen to what's happening around them, and then they offer. And they know that that space is just as equally important as the actual notes that are delivered. So, okay, this is the exercise. And my partner, Christy, is a vagal-informed intuitive coach. So she taught me this. So I owe this to her. But if you feel called, follow along with this. Put your hands on your knees or your legs comfortably. And check your range of motion of your neck. So look to the right. Just check it out. Say hi to your neighbor. Look forward. Then look to the left. Look forward. Okay, now, looking to the right, don't move your head, just move your eyes to the right and keep them there until you feel a sigh or a stretch or a yawn or a major blink. And when you're good there, do the same on the left side until there's a stretch or a yawn, a burp. And then bring it to the center. And now check your range of motion to the right with your neck and your left. Was it different? Yeah, that's your vagus nerve. So it was probably like this, and now it's expanded in your body. So I find that I do that when I'm in an uncomfortable position, when I'm in a liminal space. That exercise is amazing to move through those spaces. That's all. Yeah.